Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another video, and in this one I'm going to be going through some of my favorite acrylic painting techniques that you can try out as well. They are very easy and effective and will really make your paintings look more interesting and make them stand out more. So let's jump right into the first technique, and that's the ethanol dripping technique. There's a similar one with alcohol and watercolor, and since thinned down acrylic paint works almost the same as watercolor, this technique works very well. It's important to mention that this works a lot better on canvas or a waterproof surface. If you want to use it on paper, I would recommend to apply at least one layer of gesso or acrylic paint first, let that surface dry completely, and then you're good to go. What you want to do is to apply a thin layer of paint on your surface. Make sure it's not too wet or too dry. Then drip some drops of ethanol over it and you will see immediately that it creates these really amazing patterns. A little safety reminder: always keep your ethanol bottle closed and your window open. You need to have a good ventilation in your room when you are working with ethanol until it's completely dry. Once your first layer is dry, you can add the next layer over it after the same principle. We are working from light to dark here, so start with some lighter colors and go darker layer by layer. If you want, you can also add a glaze of white in between to lighten it up a bit in case it gets too dark. You can create as many layers as you want, but don't add too many layers because you want your light background to still shine through and keep that nice contrast. This technique creates some really nice textures and patterns that work very well, for example for floral paintings, and will make your painting really look unique and interesting. With the second technique you can create similar abstract textures, but instead of round ones it gives you more angular shapes, which looks really nice if you want to paint, for example, crystals or ice-like textures. For this you're going to need some cling film. Since this technique also works better on a waterproof surface, the first steps are the same as in the ethanol technique. Create your waterproof base layer, and after that had dried completely, you can start adding your glaze layers. Instead of dripping something over your paint, you want to add some cling film over it while it's still wet. Just lay it down on your glaze and mold it into any shape you want. Once you have placed the cling film down, you can either remove it instantly, which gives you already some of the shapes, or what I recommend is letting it dry completely so that almost no paint sticks to the cling film once you remove it. This gives you the sharpest results with a really nice contrast. And of course, you can add several layers of it as well, depending on how much texture you want. Also, since you can use it again, don't throw your cling film away. Just wash off the paint that sticks to it, or what I like to do, let the paint dry. Once you use the cling film again, some of the dried paint may transfer to your next layer, what can often turn into some surprising effects. If you don't want that, it's okay, just wash it off. The third technique you can use for creating nice underpaintings, an interesting background, or just to blend your colors. And it's basically just dipping your finger into the paint of your choice and spreading it over the paper the way you want. Depending on how much you smudge, the colors will blend more into another or not. You can also choose to leave some harsher edges to intensify the contrast, or create some really nice cloudy effects. Of course, you can also use a brush for a similar technique, but painting with your fingers will give your piece a literally unique style that becomes especially visible when you use this as an underpainting for one of the layering techniques I've shown you before. Painting with your fingers might be a bit messier for your hands than using a brush, but I think it's easier and faster for this kind of technique, and it can give you a completely new feeling for your paints and painting in general. It's just a really fun thing to do. The next technique is also a very simple but effective technique that you can use to create interesting textures or to erase some areas you just painted. And for that technique you're going to need a paper towel or a tissue paper. First, you're going to create a layer of paint, and once you did that, you can go ahead and dip your paper towel into your still wet paint. And as you can see, that way you're going to lift up some of the paint and lighten and dry the area beneath it. Depending on how wet or dry the paint already is, the paper towel will have a different effect on it. Be aware that the erasing technique only works as long as the paint is still wet. The wetter, the stronger the erasing effect. If your paint is already starting to dry, you can either wet your paper towel beforehand or spray some water over the surface first and then go in again with your paper towel. Just experiment with the way you fold your paper towel beforehand and create some really nice cloudy effects or abstract shapes, or just erase what you didn't like. It's that easy. The last technique I want to share with you is very nice for creating textures that you can actually feel once they're dry. For demonstration, I'll use a painting knife, but you can also use a piece of cardboard or an old credit card. And what you want to do is to dip into some paint. I recommend a darker and lighter one at first, and then just let the knife drag the paint over the surface. Depending on how you slide it and how much pressure you use, the texture will change. Press your palette knife down to flatten the texture and mix the colors more. Let it slide over the paper just slightly and get some rather less mixed textures. Or just try to create some awesome looking geometric shapes. Basically, you could really go crazy and expressive with this technique and just bring a lot of life into your paintings. And as you can see, once the paint is completely dry, you can slide over it with your finger and actually feel the textures you just created. And this will make your painting stand out even more. And that's it. These were my top 5 acrylic painting techniques that I wanted to go through today. I hope that you got some inspiration out of it and motivation to try these techniques out. Let me know which one's your favorite out of these. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'm planning to create more tutorial videos of this kind in the future, so stay tuned and have a nice day everyone. Bye!